All right, so next up, we have another, what I call beginner instinct. And that is, can I call a hook inside an if statement, inside a conditional of some kind? And when you first start using hooks, it feels natural. You're like, oh, if this value is true, I want to call my hook, otherwise I don't. Well, React, if you have ESLint warnings on, will, I guess not React, but ESLint will tell you, hey, don't do this. Or React might tell you, actually, I don't know if ESLint does, but there are cases where this will be detected and you'll get a warning, hey, about doing this. In fact, actually, I'll talk more about the warnings and errors you can get because I tested this. So yeah, let's say you want to call a hook inside an if statement, inside the body of an if statement. What happens if you do that? Can you do that? I found out. So I did this. And what was fascinating was, at first, everything just worked. I couldn't find any bugs. So I had a bunch of use states and I had if statements and I had hooks, my own custom hooks inside of if statements that were logging out values. I could not get it to break. It all worked perfectly. In dev mode, production mode, everything worked great. I had no issues whatsoever. I was like, wow, this is not what I was expecting. I was very surprised. I thought it was going to yell at me. I thought it was going to break. I couldn't figure it out. What's going on? So I was like, okay, maybe use state. This is actually fine. Let me try some other hooks. So I added a use effect in the middle of my use states inside of a conditional. This is when I finally got it to break. And I mean break. React broke. Both in dev mode and in prod mode. So the error I got was error should have a queue. Like React just crashed and was like, error should have a queue. This is likely a bug in React. Please file an issue. This is what it told me. And I was like, okay, probably the fact, clearly React probably wanted to detect this and give you a more useful warning. Based on the documentation, this is a bug in your code, not necessarily a bug in React. Maybe the bug is not giving you a better error message, but the error message literally said, this is likely a bug in React. Please file an issue. So this is when it starts getting more interesting. So I was like, aha. So I don't want to promise this. The version of React that I was using, which is in React 18, I don't know actually the specific minor version, but React 18, it seems like you can actually use custom hooks and use state hooks inside conditionals, and it works without problems. I don't really know why you'd want to do some of that, but if all you're using is use states and custom hooks, I don't want to promise anything because you're breaking the rules of React, but it seems like it just works perfectly fine. But if you get into other things like use effect and you put them in a conditional, it does not work. So I messed around with it some more. I removed, so I had like a use state, and then inside an if statement I had a use effect, and then after the if statement I had a use state. And this so I removed the use state that was after the conditional, and I actually had a different error both in dev mode and prod. It said error rendered fewer hooks than expected. This may be caused by an accidental early return statement, which is true. That would be a form of conditional. In this case, I had it inside an if statement. So this was both interesting, but not all that surprising. So if you call hooks within any sort of conditional, early returns, if statements, loops, whatever it is, you're going to break things. It might work depending on... Apparently, some hooks, it's perfectly fine. In fact, for like custom hooks that don't use effect, ever, it might be fine. But then this is a case where somebody might come in later and add that to this custom hook, and then things break, and you don't want that either. So to write robust code, you can't call hooks inside conditionals. I was sad. I was excited. At first I was like, wow, does this actually work? Like, I was so excited. I was like, wow, maybe they fixed this. This is awesome. We can use hooks and conditionals. I'm so excited. Well, I'm totally blowing out the limiter on my gear here, but So I was really excited. I thought, oh, cool, they fixed this, but no. And why do I say they fixed this? I also think this is bad design on React's part. Again, this feels like exposing a performance optimization that they didn't have to expose. So I don't actually know the specifics of how this is implemented, but based on my reading in other sources and the errors I got, especially the one about should have a queue, essentially I think the way React figures out how to associate hooks with any internal state that they need within React is just purely based on the order in which they run. And so if you have in a conditional, you're changing the order in which things run. You're not, it's saying, hey, I thought the third hook was going to be this one, but it's something else. And I find this very strange. Like, why? To me, it seems like there has to have been some higher level API they could have provided that actually, I have a whole episode on this one too, now that I think about it. It's been a while, where I actually explored how you could implement this. And I believe if you modify React itself, you could probably implement hooks in a way that allow you to use them in conditionals. How important this is, I'm not really sure. Maybe this isn't that important. It could be interesting being able to use them in loops. But yeah, the short of it is, unfortunately, you don't put your hooks inside. Like, all the hooks in your component must always run every single time your component renders, and they must always run in the same order. It's pretty simple. Don't break it. It might work, but eventually, again, you'll get some behavior you definitely don't want.